how could a so-called primitive society have achieved such sophisticated stone carving techniques? Check out this block right here. Something really cool about this one. So what is going on here?
Pumapunku is a mind-bending archaeological site in Bolivia with those impossibly precise stone blocks that look like they were cut with lasers. Well, in 2025, the mystery was finally cracked. And guess what? It's not aliens. It's something way weirder, way more human, and honestly, way more terrifying.
Clearly, this rock has been somehow magnetized. So was it exposed to some electromagnetic waves? I mean, this whole place is bizarre.
The real truth behind Pumapunku isn't just about how those stones were carved. It's about why they were carved and who ordered it to be done. You need to stick with me till the very end of this video because I'm going to show you the truth. Come along. Scientists uncovered Pumapunku's true origin in 2025. In early 2025, something remarkable happened. Pumapunku, the mysterious stone complex nestled high in Bolivia's Andes Mountains, finally gave up one of its biggest secrets. For decades, people had scratched their heads wondering how such a complex structure, famous for its impossibly precise stone cuts and megalithic blocks, was built by a civilization that didn't seem to have access to advanced tools or technologies. Some even threw their hands in the air and turned to theories involving aliens. But then, out of the blue, a new team of researchers cracked something open that changed everything. Isn't it funny how history can sit quietly for centuries until someone looks at it from just the right angle? The whole thing began when Bolivian authorities, prompted by a routine conservation survey in late 2024, stumbled upon something oddly compelling. While digging gently through sediment that had collected over the years, workers unearthed stone fragments that hadn't been seen, let alone studied, in modern times. These pieces weren't just random rubble. They carried curious marks, fine, deliberate lines and grooves that didn't fit with what experts believed ancient carving tools could produce. Naturally, this discovery made waves. What tools could have made such marks? And more importantly, how had these fragments remained hidden for so long? The Bolivian Ministry of Culture realized this wasn't a case for a single department or a couple of university researchers. It was time for a global effort. And so they greenlit something that had never been allowed before: full-scale scientific testing, including minimally invasive methods like laser scanning, 3D imaging, and micro-sample analysis. For the first time, the ancient stones of Pumapunku would be examined with 21st-century tools. Why do the stones at Pumapunku fit like a jigsaw puzzle, without modern tools? Well, in 2025, someone finally cracked the code. And no, it's not what the experts thought. Hang on till the end. Now, this is where things get interesting. The 2025 investigation wasn't led by just anyone. It was spearheaded by Dr. Carlos Menendez, a well-known archaeoastronomer from the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Menendez wasn't new to big historical puzzles. In fact, he had built a career connecting ancient structures with celestial alignments, and he had a knack for seeing what others missed. His team was like a dream lineup of modern science. Dr. Elena Ruiz, a geochemical expert who could identify a stone's origin from a single fleck of dust. Dr. James Wong, a computational archaeologist who built digital reconstructions from data. Professor Ahmed Nasser, a master in ancient construction methods. And Dr. Miguel Cordero, who specialized in indigenous knowledge systems. Now, you might be wondering, why include someone who focused on oral traditions in a high-tech investigation? But here's where the story really shines. You see, one of the biggest shifts in this project was the inclusion of local Aymara elders, These were not just ceremonial figures or token representatives. Their insights were central to shaping the research. For decades, indigenous voices had been pushed to the margins of archaeological research. But this time, things were different. Dr. Cordero put it simply: the elders knew things the stones confirmed. Their stories spoke of plant-based adhesives, of aligning stones with seasonal changes, and of community rituals tied directly to construction. Isn't it fascinating how knowledge passed down through spoken word, often dismissed as myth, can align so perfectly with cold, hard data? With permissions secured and minds opened, the team brought in technology that would have seemed like science fiction to the site's original builders. Drone-mounted cameras swept over the landscape, capturing images from multiple angles. High-resolution photogrammetry and LiDAR scanning produced 3D models of every visible stone, down to sub-millimeter accuracy. But it wasn't just about gathering visuals, it was about finding meaning in the patterns. That's where artificial intelligence came in. Using custom-designed machine learning models, Dr. Wong and his team fed in over 12 terabytes of image data to create a digital twin of the site, as it might have looked when it was first built. And what did they find? Something astonishing. The AI began picking up patterns, mathematical ratios, alignment points, and symmetry that human eyes had long overlooked. The stones weren't placed randomly or just to look nice. They were arranged with a kind of numerical logic that suggested intentional design on a level previously thought impossible for that time period. Some sections followed the golden ratio. Others reflected astronomical alignments. The deeper the researchers looked, the more they realized these builders had a deep understanding of geometry, engineering, and even hydrology. Yes, hydrology. Because ground-penetrating radar soon uncovered something even more intriguing beneath the surface, a network of channels and foundational supports designed to manage water flow. What could that mean? Was Pumapunku not just a temple or ceremonial ground, but also an engineered space designed to harness or work with water? Was it spiritual, scientific, or both? The discovery of these water systems threw open new debates and showed how much we still have to learn about pre-Columbian South American civilizations. But perhaps the most unexpected twist came from the smallest of discoveries: microscopic analysis of the stone surfaces. Scientists detected organic compounds embedded in the tool marks. That alone might have seemed like a fluke, but repeated samples showed the same thing: evidence of plant-based binding agents. In other words, the builders of Pumapunku may have used natural adhesives to stabilize or join stones. It wasn't cement, and it wasn't alien technology. It was intelligent use of local resources, and it had simply gone unnoticed until now. By the end of the study, Dr. Menendez said something that many researchers nodded along to. This changes how we view ancient engineering across the Americas. He wasn't exaggerating. What had once seemed like a site that defied explanation was now beginning to make sense through a blend of science, storytelling, and respectful listening. Researchers reconstruct Pumapunku's architecture using 3D models. For decades, Pumapunku has been one of the world's greatest ancient mysteries. The scattered stones, the precise cuts, the puzzling H-shaped blocks. So many questions have swirled around this archaeological site nestled high in the Bolivian Andes. How did these massive stones get there? Who shaped them with such accuracy? And perhaps the most asked question of all, was it really just a chaotic pile of ruins, or was there something more deliberate hidden beneath the surface? For years, no one could quite agree on the answers. But now, thanks to a groundbreaking blend of cutting-edge technology and good old-fashioned curiosity, researchers believe they've finally uncovered what lies at the heart of Puma Punku, and it's far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. According to researchers, what once looked like a random scatter of megalithic debris was never random at all. In fact, the entire site appears to have been part of a larger, intricate architectural plan. Roland Wong and his international team of archaeologists and engineers have spent years piecing together the mystery using advanced 3D modeling software, allowing them to digitally reassemble the broken stones and bring Pumapunku back to life, at least on a computer screen. And what did they discover? That these ancient builders had not only a vision, but a very precise system, one that rivals some of our most modern construction methods. A big part of that system revolved around those iconic H-shaped stones, which for a long time baffled even the most seasoned researchers. People often wondered, why that shape? Was it symbolic? Decorative? Just a happy accident? Dr. Sofia Mendez, an architectural historian on the team, says none of the above. These H-blocks, it turns out, weren't just quirky design elements. They were standard modules in a highly organized building system. They weren't random, she explained. Each H-block was designed with purpose, like puzzle pieces engineered to fit together in multiple ways. Through careful digital analysis, the team found that these blocks had specific angles and cuts that allowed them to interlock securely with other stones, giving the entire structure both strength and flexibility. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. The team identified 6 main types of these H-blocks, each with its own role in the larger structure. Imagine that, centuries before prefabricated homes and modular furniture, the Tiwanaku civilization was already doing it with stone. The builders didn't just carve and stack, they engineered and assembled. And they did it with an astonishing level of mathematical precision. Measurements taken from different H-blocks revealed consistent ratios, pointing to a sophisticated system of measurement that guided the entire construction process. It raises the question, how did a civilization with no known written language or wheel-based transport achieve something so advanced? And that's just the beginning. By feeding the digitally reconstructed pieces into simulation software, the team created a digital twin of the entire Pumapunku site. This wasn't just a rough idea of what it might have looked like. This was a detailed, fully rendered replica that let researchers walk through the ancient complex virtually, just as its original inhabitants might have. And what did this virtual stroll reveal? A lot. Far from being a chaotic heap of ruins, Pumapunku was actually a symmetrical ceremonial space, laid out with near-perfect alignment to the cardinal directions. Its platforms and courtyards weren't just randomly placed, they followed a very deliberate plan. Even more mind-blowing was the discovery of an elaborate water system that had been carved into the structure. When the team ran digital simulations of how water would have flowed through the channels, it became clear that the system wasn't just functional, it was theatrical. Water would have cascaded through carefully designed channels, creating a kind of living, moving artwork during ceremonies. Imagine standing in a sacred courtyard, surrounded by stone and sky, as water shimmered and danced across the surface in sync with the rituals. Can you picture how awe-inspiring that must have been? The digital reconstruction also helped researchers better understand how people may have moved through the space. Some areas were open and accessible, while others became increasingly restricted, suggesting a kind of spiritual hierarchy. The deeper you went into the structure, the more sacred and exclusive the space became. Was this a gathering place for the people? A place of prayer? A stage for elite rituals? Perhaps all three. But the team didn't stop at virtual models. To test their theories in the real world, they decided to build physical prototypes using 3D printing technology. By printing scale models of the H blocks and assembling them by hand, they were able to test how the pieces fit together, how they held up under simulated seismic stress, and even how the spaces affected sound. Dr. Takeshi Yamamoto, an engineering archaeologist involved in the project, said building these models was crucial for understanding how people centuries ago managed to lift, align, and position massive stones with such accuracy. The angled cuts and interlocking parts made the construction easier, not harder, he noted, which is incredible when you consider they didn't have the machinery we rely on today. One of the most surprising results from these physical models was the acoustics. In the full-scale replica of the central platform, sounds made in one part of the space could be heard with crystal clarity in another. This led the team to believe that the structure may have been designed with sound in mind, perhaps to amplify voices during ceremonies or rituals. Could this mean the Tiwanaku people were also sound engineers in their own right? It's certainly possible. So, after all this research, what's the big takeaway? In the words of the research team, Pumapunku is not the chaotic, crumbling ruin it once seemed to be. It's a complex, intentional, and brilliantly designed masterpiece of ancient engineering. Every cut, every angle, every block had a reason. That's right. What comes next could shake the foundations of how we define ancient technology. So don't even think about clicking away now, because what we're about to reveal next will challenge everything you thought you knew about human history. Geochemical analysis reveals ancient stone casting techniques. In 2025, something extraordinary came to light, something that sent ripples across the entire world of archaeology and left both experts and enthusiasts wondering, have we been wrong about Pumapunku all along? Deep in a lab, a group of researchers began analyzing stone samples taken from this mysterious ancient site in Bolivia. For years, people had marveled at the sheer precision of the massive stone blocks found at Pumapunku. But how were they carved so perfectly without modern tools? How did ancient builders move such heavy slabs without wheels or cranes? These questions have baffled scientists for decades. But now, thanks to a groundbreaking new discovery, there might finally be an answer. And it's not what anyone expected. According to researchers, the key wasn't just in the size or shape of the stones, but in what they were made of. Using advanced geochemical tests, including scanning electron microscopy, SEM, and energy dispersive X-ray, EDX, analysis, the scientists uncovered something strange. As they examined gray andesite samples, they found something that really shouldn't have been there: organic material. That's right, carbon and nitrogen, the kinds of things you'd expect in plants or animals, not rocks formed in the scorching heat of a volcano. Naturally formed andesite is supposed to come from magma, which burns off all organics during its creation. So how could traces of organic matter have survived? That question alone sent the team into a frenzy of follow-up tests. It wasn't just a one-off mistake. The results kept pointing to the same conclusion. This wasn't regular volcanic rock. In fact, it seemed more like something made intentionally by people. Then came the even more fascinating part. When they studied samples of the red sandstone blocks, they noticed an unusual matrix binding the grains together, a thick glue-like mix made of what they called ferrosilicate. Scientists said it was a unicum, something totally unique and not found in natural sandstone formations. Think about that, an ancient material never seen in nature, appearing consistently across massive building blocks arranged with near-perfect alignment. Coincidence? Not likely. As if that weren't enough, these same samples showed very high levels of sodium. Specifically, they found evidence of a mineral called albite, which usually forms in certain sedimentary conditions. But again, the conditions weren't quite right. The only logical explanation? The sodium came from an outside source, probably sodium carbonate, harvested from a place called Laguna Cachi, a salt lake located in Bolivia's Altiplano Desert. Interestingly, ancient trade records suggest that llama caravans once traveled regularly through that area. So is it possible the builders intentionally gathered these salts to use in construction? That's exactly what the evidence now suggests. These findings breathed new life into something called the geopolymer theory. In simple terms, this theory argues that what we've long believed were carved stones were actually man-made, cast like concrete. The idea was always considered fringe, but the 2025 lab results changed everything. SEM-EDS, XRD, and thin section analysis all pointed to the same thing. The sandstone blocks were made by mixing natural grains with a chemical binder, something very similar to how we make concrete today. Except the formula was different. It relied on clay, alkaline salts, and in some cases, organic acids from plants. Now here's where things get even more intriguing. Local legends in the Andes have long spoken of plant extracts that could soften stone. For years, archaeologists brushed these stories off as myth. But what if they were true? The new research identified compounds that were likely derived from natural carboxylic acids, substances that could have come from native plants. These acids, when mixed with certain minerals, created a binding agent strong enough to form stone-like blocks. Could ancient people have figured this out over 1,000 years ago? All signs now point to yes. It all leads to one big, almost mind-bending realization. The stones at Pumapunku weren't carved. They were cast. That's right. Instead of chiseling stone from a quarry, dragging it for miles and shaping it by hand, ancient builders may have mixed up a batch of what we might call prehistoric concrete, poured it into molds, and let it set. They used local materials, clay, eroded rock, sodium carbonate, and paired them with plant-based binders to create building blocks that looked and felt like solid stone. And they did all of this long before the invention of modern cement or engineering tools. Even more shocking, there's no known quarry nearby that could have produced such massive stones. The local rock is too soft and crumbly. That makes the casting theory even more plausible. After all, why drag gigantic boulders when you could just make them where you need them? This changes everything we thought we knew about the Tiwanaku civilization. Instead of being limited by their tools or environment, they seem to have developed an early form of geosynthesis, that is, speeding up natural geological processes through human-made chemistry. So now, with every new test result and every microscopic scan, the pieces fall into place. The mystery of Pumapunku is slowly being unraveled. What once seemed impossible now makes perfect sense. The sharp cuts, the smooth surfaces, the interlocking shapes. They're not signs of alien technology or lost civilizations from another world. They're evidence of human ingenuity, fueled by necessity and guided by deep knowledge of the earth. And that brings us to something truly mind-bending: the way Tiwanaku engineers embedded sacred geometry into Pumapunku. Trust me, what you're about to learn will change how you see the ancient world. So stay with me till the end. Tiwanaku engineers embed sacred geometry into Pumapunku. For years, Pumapunku stood as one of archaeology's most mystifying sites. A new investigation didn't just focus on how these stones were carved or how they were moved. Instead, it dug deeper into the sky, the stars, and the spiritual heart of a long-lost civilization. Researchers began to ask a bigger question. What if Pumapunku wasn't just a marvel of ancient engineering, but also a living calendar, a cosmic map, and a sacred mirror of the heavens? As the research unfolded, they discovered that beyond the masterful construction techniques, there was something even more profound hiding in plain sight. According to the team's findings, the architects of Puma Punku, believed to be the Tiwanaku civilization, had embedded a deep understanding of astronomy into the very bones of the site. Could this be a coincidence? Unlikely. The layout, proportions, and placements weren't random. Experts said it was clear now. This wasn't just a gathering place. It was a spiritual and astronomical center built with a purpose that extended far beyond the earthly. One of the most jaw-dropping discoveries came when archaeologists studied the main temple and found that it was deliberately built as an astronomical observatory. Not something that just happened to align with the sun by chance, but something that was purposefully designed to capture celestial moments. During the spring equinox, for instance, the sunrise appears through a stone archway and lights up a central chamber in a moment that could only be described as magical. It's the kind of alignment that makes you stop and wonder, how did they know how to do this? With no telescopes, no satellites, no modern tools, only the sky above and generations of watching, learning, and revering. Now here's where things got even more intriguing. Initially, the team expected to find solstice alignments matching up with the temple's cornerstones. That would have made sense, right? But the sun didn't quite match up the way they thought it would. Instead of giving up or brushing it off, they dug deeper, literally and figuratively. They calculated astronomical shifts that occur over thousands of years. And the result? The alignments would have been exact, not hundreds, but nearly 17,000 years ago. Let that sink in. 17,000. That's older than the pyramids, older than recorded history as we know it. Of course, some scholars still contest that dating. It's a big claim, and naturally there's resistance. But it opened up a wave of new questions. Were the builders passing down knowledge from an even older civilization? Could our timelines of human development be off by thousands of years? Adding another layer of meaning to all this was the recurring presence of the chacana, or the Andean cross, a powerful symbol representing the three levels of existence in Incan and pre-Incan cosmology: the underworld, the earthly world, and the heavens. According to the researchers, this symbol wasn't just something carved into stone for decoration. It shaped the entire design of the Tiwanaku complex. The Acapana, a massive terraced mound nearby, was found to mirror the chacana's shape with a central reservoir believed to represent the portal between worlds. And when they mapped Puma Punku from the air, the placement of structures echoed that same cross-like geometry. Coincidence? Or cosmic design? Even the gate carvings, long thought to be purely decorative or symbolic, took on new meaning. Archaeologists now believe they functioned as part of a celestial calendar, recording solstices, equinoxes, and other key astronomical events. Perhaps the most poetic aspect of the site lies in something you might not expect: its water system. Who would imagine that ancient engineers would embed meaning into water channels? And then there's the nearby presence of Lake Titicaca, whose name itself carries sacred linguistic roots, according to some linguistic scholars. Being so close to this ancient and revered body of water wasn't a geographical fluke. So, what does all of this mean? Was Puma Punku a spiritual compass? A celestial observatory? A message passed down through stone and silence across thousands of years? Depending on who you ask, the answer might be all of the above. And perhaps the biggest question lingering in the minds of researchers now is this: what else have we missed because we weren't looking closely enough? What really is Puma Punku? For years, people around the world looked at Puma Punku with wide eyes and wild imaginations. Who wouldn't? The precision of the stones, The way the blocks were arranged like an ancient jigsaw puzzle. The seemingly unexplainable techniques. It all felt too advanced for the people of that time, didn't it? Many wondered, how could ancient humans possibly have done this without help from some higher, perhaps extraterrestrial, intelligence? But in 2025, after decades of heated debates and jaw-dropping theories, something remarkable happened. A series of exhaustive studies finally painted a much clearer picture, one that had nothing to do with UFOs or alien engineers. It turns out, Pumapunku wasn't a mystery coded in stars. It was a monument carved by human hands, shaped by the minds and methods of an indigenous people whose skills had long been ignored or underestimated. Researchers, digging through years of assumptions and misinterpretations, found that many of the site's so-called impossible features had perfectly logical, down-to-earth explanations. Remember those massive stones that were said to be made of uncuttable granite and diorite? Turns out, most of them were actually sandstone and andesite, materials soft enough to be shaped with tools made of stone, not diamond-tipped drills from another galaxy. And the way the blocks were transported? That old story about levitation? That too fell apart once scientists discovered telltale drag marks on the ground and hoisting holes in the stones. Clear indicators that the builders used very human, very physical methods to move their materials. No tractor beams needed. And then there was the carving. For years, people believed the crisp cuts and perfect angles had to be made with advanced tools that the local cultures supposedly didn't have. But closer inspection revealed signs of tried-and-true ancient techniques, pounding stones that created initial indentations, followed by polishing with sand, something seen in stonework across many ancient civilizations. Is it really that hard to believe that people working with patience, skill, and intimate knowledge of their materials could pull this off? The evidence suggests not. Even more telling, archaeologists started connecting the dots between Pumapunku and other nearby pre-Incan sites, like Pucara and Chiripa. These places featured similar building styles and iconography, offering undeniable proof that the techniques used at Pumapunku weren't some isolated miracle. They were the product of cultural evolution. The symbols carved into the stones, long viewed as mysterious or otherworldly, actually fit right in with the Yaya Mama iconography common in the region. In other words, everything about Pumapunku, the design, the tools, the process, fit beautifully within the timeline and cultural context of the Tiwanaku people who built it. What's especially exciting is that the scientific community is not just rethinking Pumapunku, they're rethinking everything. If people without written language or metal tools could pull off what they did in Bolivia, what else have we overlooked? Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey or the giant stone heads of Easter Island might need a second look, not through the eyes of fantasy, but with fresh respect for what humans can do when they understand their environment and work together with vision and grit. So, why does this matter? Why should we care that Pumapunku was made by people and not aliens? Because it reminds us of what humans are capable of. It shifts the glory back to the real builders, the indigenous cultures who've too often been left out of their own history. It teaches us that mystery doesn't always mean magic or the supernatural. Sometimes it just means we haven't looked closely enough. And now that we are, we're finding brilliance where we should have expected it all along. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.